She planted drugs in my room, and my mom kicked me out. 10 years later, I exposed her secret connection to my fiancé's company and took everything from her. When my mother slammed the front door and told me to get out before she called the cops, I was 17 years old, soaking wet from the shower, still in a towel, and completely stunned. The reason? She claimed she found a bag of weed and empty beer bottles under my bed, planted there, I later learned, by my stepsister. That was the day I stopped being a daughter and became a stranger in my own home. My name's Lacey. I'm 26 now, engaged to the man of my dreams, David, and I'm finally at peace. But back then, I lived in a war zone disguised as a family home. Let me rewind a little. I grew up in suburban New Jersey. My mom, Karen, was 46 when she kicked me out, but emotionally, she might as well have been 16. She was wild, impulsive, and allergic to responsibility. My dad ghosted us when I was 2. He wired child support checks every month like some cold, invisible machine, but he never once showed up to a school play or even a parent-teacher conference. Karen didn't exactly step up to fill the gap. She bounced from one boyfriend to another like a pinball, leaving me in the care of babysitters while she chased the next thrill. She was a decent freelance designer and pulled in enough to live comfortably, but she never looked at me like I mattered. I was just there, like furniture, like an old couch she couldn't throw out yet. Things got worse when I turned 13. That's when she met Bob. He was in his 50s, balding, polite, and creepy in a way I couldn't quite explain. He had a daughter, Bianca, same age as me, but prettier, sharper, and much, much meaner. Karen told me to be on my best behavior the night she introduced them. She'd brought home a dozen guys before, but never once cared how I acted around them. So I knew this was serious. They moved in 3 months later. That's when everything started unraveling. My bedroom, my sanctuary, was suddenly up for grabs. Karen wanted me to share it with Bianca. I refused. I had nothing else in that house. That room, with its scratchy navy curtains and wobbly IKEA desk, was the only place I could breathe. We fought. I told her she had no legal grounds to throw me out. I knew she hated that I had read enough to know my rights. She backed down and gave Bianca the basement instead. It wasn't terrible. Karen even painted the walls and bought a new rug. But Bianca hated it. Or maybe she hated me for not giving in. From that moment on, I became her personal enemy. She'd say things like, "Your dad probably left because you were too ugly to look at," and laugh like she was joking. She'd trip me in the hallway, start rumors at school, and roll her eyes in front of teachers who adored me just to cast doubt. I didn't fight back, not because I didn't want to, but because it never helped. Every time we argued, Karen took her side. Bianca would cry on cue, and I'd get grounded for disrespecting her sister. That word, sister, felt like a slap in the face. The isolation was brutal. By my junior year, I'd gained nearly 30 pounds, lost most of my friends, and was failing chemistry. I hated myself, my body, and my life. The bullying didn't stop at school. At home, it was constant. But nothing compared to what happened a few weeks before my 18th birthday. It was a Saturday. I'd gone to shower and forgot to lock my room. When I came out, Karen, Bob, and Bianca were standing in a triangle around my bed like a jury. Karen was holding a gallon-sized Ziploc bag filled with weed and several empty beer bottles. "I found this under your mattress," she said. Her voice was trembling, but not with concern. With rage. Bianca stood there, smug, arms folded, not saying a word. My heart dropped. "That's not mine," I said instantly. "I swear to God, I've never." "Don't lie to me," Karen shouted, slamming the bag on my desk. "Do you know what this means? You're a drug addict living under my roof." I froze. "Mom, you know I wouldn't." "Don't you dare blame Bianca," she screamed. "You've always been jealous of her." I looked at Bob. He stared at the wall. "Get out," she said. "Take your crap and go." "I have nowhere to go," I whispered. "Not my problem. Either you walk out now or I call the police." And believe me, at 17 and 11 months, they'll take those drugs very seriously. That was the day my mother chose Bianca over me. That was the day I realized she never saw me as her daughter. I was a nuisance, an extra mouth, a walking problem to be solved. I packed what I could in a trash bag. No one said goodbye. No one looked back. I walked out of that house with $62 in my bank account, 2 pairs of jeans, and no plan. And what happened next shocked everyone and changed my life forever. When I walked out that front door, I wasn't thinking about where I'd sleep. I wasn't thinking about food or money or what would happen next. I was just trying to breathe. It was cold for late April. I remember the sting of the wind on my wet skin, my fingers clutching that flimsy trash bag like it held more than old jeans and a toothbrush. I walked to the park 3 blocks down and sat on the bench until it got too dark to pretend I wasn't terrified. By midnight, I was standing outside my best friend's apartment. Amy. She was the only person who had seen through my fake smiles at school, the only one who knew pieces of the truth. I hadn't told her everything. I was too ashamed, but she knew enough to understand when I showed up on her doorstep shaking. She didn't ask questions. "Come inside," she whispered, pulling me into a hug. When I told her what had happened, how they'd planted drugs in my room and thrown me out, her face twisted with fury. And when I admitted I had nowhere to go, she said something I'll never forget. "You're not going anywhere. You're home now." Amy's parents were nothing like mine. Her mom, Diane, was a pediatric surgeon, sharp, no nonsense, but kind in a way that didn't feel performative. Her dad, Greg, worked in finance and told the worst dad jokes I'd ever heard. They let me stay in Amy's room that night. By the next morning, Diane was on the phone with my mom. That call didn't go well. Diane came into the room afterward, her jaw clenched. "She doesn't want to talk. She said you made your bed and now you have to lie in it." I braced for the worst, but Diane just sat down beside me and said, "Then you'll make a better bed somewhere else." They let me stay. Not for a weekend. Not until you figure things out. Indefinitely. No strings attached. I got a job at a local diner a few weeks later. Nights, mostly scrubbing plates, wiping counters. Diane helped me apply to community college. My grades were bad, but I got in. I didn't have much, but for the first time in my life, I had stability. Over the next few years, I transformed. I lost weight, not because I was trying, but because I wasn't eating out of anxiety anymore. My skin cleared. I started dressing better, smiling more. Amy and I would take late-night walks and dream about the future. She wanted to be a music producer. I wanted to open a business one day, maybe something in design. It felt silly at the time, but now I know those nights were sacred. 3 years later, I had saved enough to move into a tiny apartment on the east side. Diane and Greg helped me with the deposit. On the day I moved out, they hugged me like I was their own. That was when I met David. We matched on a dating app. I almost didn't swipe. His profile photo was blurry. His bio just said, "I'm the funny one. Let's get pancakes." But he made me laugh. On our first date, we sat in a booth at this grimy little 24-hour diner and ended up talking until 2 a.m. He was smart, sarcastic, gentle in ways I didn't expect. I found myself opening up to him. Not all at once, but piece by piece. We dated for a year before I found out the truth. David wasn't just some guy in finance. He was the heir to a multi-million-dollar restaurant group. His father owned an empire of fast casual dining chains. David didn't act rich. He still wore flannel shirts and drove a Toyota. When he told me, I laughed. "You're kidding." "Nope," he said, grinning. "Still want pancakes?" I moved in with him 6 months later. He introduced me to his family. They welcomed me like I belonged. His mom hugged me and said, "You look like someone who's had to fight." I like that. We got engaged last fall. For the first time in my life, I felt like I was building something from scratch that no one could take away. And then 8 years after she framed me and got me kicked out, Bianca emailed me. The subject line was just, "I'm sorry." Inside was a long, carefully written message where she admitted everything. She confessed to planting the weed. Said she resented me for stealing her room. Said she'd been a teenager and angry and didn't know why she hated me so much. But that wasn't the real reason she reached out. Because by the time I got that email, I had already discovered something far more interesting. Bianca's husband ran a packaging supply company that delivered containers to David's restaurants. Small world, huh? At first, I didn't know. I hadn't kept tabs on them, didn't follow them, didn't even whisper their names. But after her message, something felt off. Why now? Why apologize right after my engagement? So I made a fake profile, stalked her online, looked up her husband's name, found his LinkedIn. And there it was, in big bold letters, Chief Sales Officer, Vantage Packaging, one of David's suppliers. That's when I realized this wasn't an apology. This was a panic move. She thought I'd find out. She was trying to get ahead of it. I showed David everything. "Are you serious?" he said. "That's her husband?" "Yep." He shook his head. "We've already been thinking about cutting ties with that vendor. Quality's dropped. Prices are up. This just makes it easier." Bianca may have thought I was still the same girl she left sobbing in the street with a bag of clothes. She had no idea who I'd become. I wanted to believe that uncovering Bianca's connection to David's business would feel like power, like payback. But the night I found her husband's name on that supplier list, I didn't feel powerful. I felt 12 again. I felt like the girl sitting in the upstairs hallway while Bianca and her mean girl crew laughed downstairs. Like the night I overheard her tell her friend, "Lacey's just there to make me look better." Like a before photo. And most of all, I remembered the one thing I hadn't told David. When I was 16, I tried to take my own life. It was winter. Bianca had just gotten me suspended from school by framing me for stealing test answers. Karen didn't even ask if it was true. She just screamed at me until her voice went hoarse, then grounded me for embarrassing her in front of the school board. That night, I went into the bathroom, locked the door, and filled the tub. I sat in the water with a bottle of cold medicine in one hand and a razor in the other. The world felt too loud, too cruel, and I just wanted out. But then I remembered something small, so stupid and small. There was this squirrel that used to show up outside my window every morning, always trying to get into our bird feeder. I'd named him Clyde. And I remember thinking, if I die, Clyde won't understand why the window's empty tomorrow. It sounds ridiculous. But that moment brought me back. I got out, shaking, freezing. And I never told anyone. Not until now. David listened quietly as I told him the story, tears running down my face, my voice barely a whisper. And when I finished, he pulled me into his chest and just held me. "I'm glad you stayed," he said. And for the first time in a decade, I was too. After that, the decision to drop Bianca's husband from the supplier list was simple. David and his father were already sourcing a better vendor. I didn't push them. I just told them the truth. What happened next felt like fate. The morning after they canceled the contract, Bianca went nuclear on Facebook. She didn't name us directly, but she might as well have. Some people are so bitter about the past that they'll ruin your whole livelihood just to feel powerful. "I hope your wedding tastes like karma." She tagged the restaurant's official page. Comments flooded in. Her husband jumped in too, calling it a betrayal of family ties. I watched it all unfold like someone watching a wildfire from a safe distance. Then my mom texted me for the first time in 8 years. "Mom, Bianca's devastated. How could you do this to her?" She apologized. "She's changed." I stared at the screen, wondering which part of that sentence was supposed to be real. I didn't reply. But then something unexpected happened. A woman named Valerie messaged me on LinkedIn. She worked in operations at another one of Bianca's clients, a major food chain. "Valerie. Hey, not sure if we know each other, but I saw your fiancé's name come up in our vendor meeting. Thought you should know. Your stepsister's company is about to lose our contract too." Word's getting out. Apparently, this wasn't the first time Bianca's husband had caused problems. Delays, inflated invoices, and borderline shady practices. Once word spread that David's company dropped them, others followed. And Bianca? She snapped. She sent me a voice note, 2 minutes of high-pitched fury. "You ruined everything. My husband, our income, our future. I tried to make peace, Lacey. But you just couldn't let go, could you?" I almost deleted it. But instead, I played it again. Because that voice, the venom behind it, reminded me of why I left. And why I was never going back. When I stepped out of David's office building 2 days later, I wasn't expecting to see her. My mother. Standing in the parking lot, leaning against a Lexus she absolutely couldn't afford unless she was married to someone new or on her third refinanced mortgage. She looked older, thinner, grayer, but her posture was the same. Straight-backed, chin lifted, like the world owed her something. I froze. She didn't wave. Just watched me with a look I couldn't place, part anger, part desperation. "Lacey," she called. Not honey. Not baby. Just my name, like I was someone she used to know. "Karen," I said, keeping my voice flat. Her eyes flinched at that. "Can we talk?" "No," I replied instantly and started walking. She followed. "Please. It's about Bianca. She's spiraling. You have to stop this lawsuit." I laughed, actually laughed. She defamed us. David's family business. On public platforms. There's no stopping it. She's your sister. No, she's not. She never was. She stepped in front of me then, blocking my path. Do you know what people are saying about our family? I can't even go to Trader Joe's without someone asking if my daughter bankrupted her own blood. Good, I said quietly. Maybe now you'll understand what humiliation feels like. Her eyes went cold. Is this about the past? Because if you can't move on, You'll never be happy. I clenched my fists. You threw me out over a bag of weed Bianca planted. You told me I was a waste of space. Don't come here and talk about happiness. She apologized. Karen shouted, and her voice cracked, too high, too shrill. A woman nearby actually looked up from her car window. I stepped back. We're done here. And I walked away, heart pounding. She didn't follow me this time. That night, David and I sat in the living room reading over the cease and desist letter his father's lawyers sent Bianca's company. We were also filing a defamation suit. The evidence was airtight, screenshot after screenshot of public posts, emails, and messages accusing us of sabotaging her livelihood out of spite. But it was the phone call 2 days later that truly shook me. It wasn't from Bianca. It was from her husband. He left a voicemail that started calm, then unraveled. I don't know what she told you, but this wasn't personal for me. I was trying to run a business. Now we're hemorrhaging clients, our credit line's frozen, and you've made us a target. If you think I'm going down for her grudge against you, think again. And then he said something that made my stomach flip. She told me about the contract, told me she could fix it, said all she had to do was apologize. I thought she meant it. That's when I realized. Bianca had never cared about making peace. She saw me getting married to a successful man. She saw an opportunity to manipulate her way into his world again, just like she always had. Only this time, it backfired. And now? She was drowning, and she'd do anything to drag me under with her. Then came the subpoena. Bianca had countersued for loss of income due to character sabotage. A petty, desperate move. But what scared me wasn't the legal drama. It was what she attached to the claim. A screenshot of an old text thread between me and Amy from 4 years ago. Amy had texted me the night I moved into her place. Amy, if I ever see Bianca again, I swear I'll torch her whole future. Me, let her try to mess with me again. I'll burn it all down. Bianca's legal team was using this to argue that our actions were premeditated. David's lawyers weren't worried, but I was. Because what Bianca didn't know was, I meant every word. Not because I was angry, but because I was scared. Scared that if I didn't protect myself, she'd destroy me again. Just like she almost did when I was 17. Just like she did when she stood in my room, smiling, while Karen threw me out like trash. The courtroom smelled like old wood and cold metal. I sat beside David in my best blazer, heart thudding like a drum beneath the fabric. Across the aisle sat Bianca, her expression perfectly neutral. Her husband looked like he hadn't slept in weeks. Karen didn't show up. Typical. It was supposed to be a routine mediation. A chance to settle. But Bianca walked in ready to fight. She wore white, of course. Pearls. Like she was still the untouchable golden girl she'd pretended to be in high school. Like this was just another stage, and she was still the main character. The judge opened with the facts. Defamation. Interference with business relations. Both parties claim reputational harm. Bianca's lawyer droned on for 20 minutes, arguing that my vendetta had cost her husband's company over $400,000 in contracts. They referenced our text messages, our engagement post, even some podcast interview David had done where he mentioned cutting out toxic vendors. Then our turn came. David's lawyer, Lucas, sharp as a scalpel, stood up, smiled politely, and opened with, Your Honor, the defendants have conveniently left out that Vantage Packaging was already under contract review by 5 different restaurant chains before our client even sent an email. He dropped a thick packet of complaints on the judge's desk. Late deliveries. Contaminated packaging. Overbilling. These aren't rumors. These are internal investigations filed months before Ms. Sutton, my client, was even engaged. Bianca's lawyer stammered. Objection? Relevance? Withdrawn, Lucas said calmly. Let's talk about motive. And that's when he pulled out the email. The one Bianca had sent me. I know what I did was wrong. I hated you for reasons I didn't even understand. I just wanted your room, and Mom always let me have what I wanted. Lucas read it aloud. She admits to lying, to planting evidence, to participating in what amounts to a minor's wrongful expulsion. And now, with a defamation campaign, tagging my client's business, sharing public accusations, she seeks sympathy? Bianca was shifting in her seat, jaw tight. Then Lucas hit the final note. We have one more witness. The doors at the back of the courtroom opened. Amy. She walked in with the calm of someone who'd been waiting for this day. Her voice was steady as she described the night I showed up at her house, what I looked like, what I said, the bruises on my arms, the sobbing, the trash bag. She read the old journal entry I'd written in her notebook 2 days after I moved in. If I ever get out of this, I swear I will never let her win again. I don't care if she burns every bridge in my life. I will rebuild mine stronger." Bianca tried to object. This isn't relevant. But the judge didn't stop her. Because now it wasn't about who was right. It was about who had finally been heard. The ruling came a week later. We won. The court ordered Bianca and her husband to issue a formal retraction and pay $185,000 in damages to David's company. But that wasn't the part that changed everything. The judge included this statement in the ruling. This case reflects not only a defamation dispute, but a deeper history of abuse, manipulation, and the long-term emotional toll inflicted on a minor. The court recognizes Ms. Sutton's testimony and experience as credible and consistent. For the first time, someone in authority said what I had always known. That I wasn't crazy. That it happened. And it mattered. I wish I could say Bianca disappeared after that. But 2 weeks later, she posted a video on her new Instagram account, tears in her eyes, claiming she'd been targeted by cancel culture and betrayed by someone she once called family. I didn't respond. Because something bigger happened that week. I got married. David and I stood on a cliff in Big Sur, just us and the wind and our closest people. Amy was my maid of honor. Her parents sat front row. Diane cried when I walked down the aisle. When the officiant asked me if I took David to be my husband, I said, I do, but what I really meant was, I do take back my life. I do take back my voice. I do take back every version of me that was ever silenced or shamed or sent away.